we're just going to
I never post on Facebook anyway. None of my followers are expecting anything.
I just interact with
I get in trouble
them all.
every time I post on Facebook. I can post something innocent like I didn't like this movie, and people are like, "You're the worst person ever." I don't know what I've done to cultivate that community.
Hi, are we live?
I think so.
There's like a delay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, there's like a,
But we're not going to listen to ourselves because then it'll loop.
Okay.
Weird.
and we'll feel.
I can
horrible.
technically stream it to the TV and we can watch
Oh.
ourselves what's happening.
Oh, I can't do that. Too
It's gonna
self-conscious.
freak you out.
Unnecessary.
I thought it would maybe freak you out.
Because we're looking into our camera here.
Yeah, we should just be
Yeah.
doing this microphone.
And can people hear us if we're not talking to the microphone? Okay.
Yes, it's like more echoey.
Oh,
That's all. But
right.
it should be fine.
Sarah, water.
Okay.
Good girl.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to see. I'm going to go to my Facebook and see if we're streaming.
Good idea.
Because otherwise we're just going to talk it.
And everyone will miss them.
So
Be
is
like,
the idea that if we don't, until we get questions, we'll just talk chit chat? Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're supposed to take questions. And we wrote lots of
Oh,
questions.
we're live.
Ooh.
We're live.
Hey!
Okay.
Hi, everybody!
Wonder how long we've been live for.
Here we
I
go.
don't, and it won't even show me who's. I think there's 3 people watching.
Hello.
Hello, 3 people.
3 people watching.
How do I turn
Okay.
off the volume?
I should text my husband.
Welcome.
Watch on Facebook.
There we go.
Also, I'm outing both of you.
Well, now at least I'll see if that's happening. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the live stream. I'm Sarah Phillips, bachelor, married. Hey. But I'm going by Sarah Phillips.
I'm Mary Mabu. Hey.
I'm Chelsea O'Connor.
I'm Olivia Riportella.
So if you see me looking down here, it's because I'm also running the live stream as we're doing stuff.
Sarah, do you need this microphone?
No, you should be able to. They should be able to hear me. Let's see. Yeah, they can hear us.
Okay, perfect.
I think so. It's just like if we want to pass it for answers for things, because it is clearer.
Okay.
So it's like, so what we're gonna do, you can see at the bottom of the page all of our names and what we do, and our Instagram handles. So if you want to go and follow us and interact with us, feel free to do that. So we're just gonna go down the line and talk a little bit about what we do first. Our background, and if we want to talk about what we're working on now, we can, or what you're looking forward to in the world. Sometimes you're not actively working on something now, but you will be working on something. So, I'm Sarah. I'm a cinematographer in LA. I do a few other things, but that's primarily what I get hired to do, so that's what I'm going to talk about today. So, I've lived in LA for 12 years. I have worked on a bunch of few features and short films and web series, and primarily in the independent film scripted space. I've dabbled in the other worlds, but that seems to be the thing that keeps calling me back. So, and I have a bunch of stuff that I'm attached to coming up, moving forward, that I'm really excited about, including like a 90s violent piece and a sci-fi piece with a lead that's a woman. So it's very cool.
Very cool. My name is Mary. I'm a producer, independent film producer. I most recently was in the Project Involve producing fellowship. It's a great program. Everybody should apply. And you can see my work from there on HBO. And we're playing at the New Filmmakers Film Festival this month on the 14th. And the next projects I'm working on, I'm on development on a project which is like a mid-budget feature film, and then we are raising funds for another super indie film. And we just had one of our investors like drop out, so we can like talk more about that and what that's like.
If anyone has some investment funds they want to
Yeah, share.
I'm Chelsea, and I am a writer and a producer, and I do other stuff as well, but that's mostly what I've been doing lately, so I'll talk about that. And I have been really working in the digital platform space in the last couple of years. So I've worked for Crypt TV and an app called Hooked and Amaze VR. And so I've written, like with Amaze, I wrote a feature that is like choose your own adventure style, interactive.
Cool.
And with all the different branching narrative, right? And so I wrote and directed that. And right now, I am just finished writing a 6-episode series called Martha and the One that we've moved into pre-production this last week. That I'm also producing. So we're filming in April and May, and it will be on the Hooked app by the end of the summer. So yeah, so I do a lot of stuff with, it's all narrative, and so it's not independent, but it's this on-set moments feel independent, if that makes sense, budget-wise. It's
We
sort
can
of like
talk about
how it
that
works.
too, because
Yeah.
I think that that's sort of important. It's sort of where everything's happening anyways.
Yeah, so it's like, so we're, and Quibi's a big deal right now, and I don't really know what Quibi's doing because I haven't worked with them yet, but it's that kind of a space, so that's where I'm at.
I'm Olivia Riportella. I'm a DP, a cinematographer, and a union set lighting technician. I've worked for Sarah. She's a delight.
Yeah, I call her all the time.
So I work on everything from really large budget to really small budget. Pretty much I'm in the union to pay my bills and learn. The union changed my life. It's amazing. And I DP and gaff a lot of non-union projects. So right now I'm in about 2 weeks, I'm going to go shoot a horror short in Oklahoma City, starring Heather Langenkamp, who is, oops, I wasn't actually supposed to say that.
That's okay. We'll just take you out to shoot you.
We should definitely.
Pretend like that didn't happen.
We should definitely.
How many people are watching?
We should edit
3.
that. We should, okay, good. We should edit that part out. Never mind. I'm not going to.
It's live, so I can't.
I literally,
The 3 people that are
I
watching
so
right now.
forgot that I was not supposed to say that.
Those
Anyway.
3 people don't be saying stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't tell anybody.
It's fine. But anyway, I'm really excited about it. I've just been working with like 2 directors that have just been a caliber that I've been really impressed with out in Oklahoma. So I'm really excited to see the industry that's kind of growing out there.
That's cool.
Cool. I'm trying to see like how we can see who's watching, but I don't think that's possible.
That's all
I
good.
think that's like a thing where they're like, you're not supposed to know. I don't know.
Oh, I got
Okay, so let's talk about how you guys, probably you two primarily, initially, how when you get a script, I sort of want to talk about what attracts you to a project, and then in sort of just like get into how you start budgeting.
You want to go first?
Sure. So, in terms of what attracts me to a project, it's always the story. If I'm drawn to it when I'm reading it, and then also meeting with the writer-director plays a huge factor. If we're vibing, if we get along, if we kind of have the same vision for the story they want to tell, that's how I know that I'll want to work on a project. All the films that I produce independently, they're very passion driven, so we don't really think about whether there's an audience or not. It's just more like, is there a need to tell the story? Do we want to get the story out there? And it just kind of goes from there. Budget wise, ideally, I like it when there's a budget involved when I come on board, but that's like, wishful thinking. So because it's at such an indie level, usually, me, the writer, director, we'll have to put our heads together and figure out what we want the funding strategy to be. So, that can look like a lot of different things. It could look like crowdfunding. It could look like private investors. It could look like fiscal sponsorships. It just depends on the story, how much we have so far, and what kind of next steps we want to take with the project.
Okay, the question was what
attracts you to a project, and then how do you approach a budget? She sort of went about the sort of the EP side of the budget, which is like finding the money and where it comes from.
Right. Okay.
You can either talk about that or the actual breakdown.
Okay. So, what draws me to a project is different depending on what kind of project it is, right? So, if it is for like a client, like a digital platform space, it's usually more like, is this something that I am seeking out in my portfolio? Meaning, like, I haven't done anything with huge monsters before, and like the special effects that are involved with that, and the monster builds, and like with Crypt TV, that was a big thing. Like, that was a whole thing I'd never done before. And so, like, yeah, I want to do that. And then with other projects, like, I've never shot, 20 days before. I want to do that. I've never had a budget that big before. I want to do that. So it has a tendency to be a little bit more geared towards that. But the story also really matters, always. Because if it's a horrible story, I don't really want to work on it. No, because nobody really wants to work on it. But I've also done a lot of indie passion project stuff, more that type. And usually if I'm doing a project that way, I have to really like the story, but then I always sit down with the director and I have 2 questions that I ask, and it's the same question and I ask it twice. Why are you making this film? And I want a artistic reason and I want a non-artistic reason. And the examples for that would be like, the artistic reason of making this film is like, this story is inside of me, and sometimes they've written it and sometimes they haven't, right? But like, the story is inside of me and I wrote it and I'm passionate about it and I really want to get it on the page. Or like, I've always been fascinated with sexuality and the story has different types of sexuality, so I want to, that's like their artistic reason for making it. And then their non-artistic reason is meaning like, I've never festivaled and I think this film is a great festival option. Or I have never made anything to be screened in this way and therefore I want to do it. Or like, this is a big payday and I need to make money. Like, I don't even care if that's the answer. There should always be an artistic reason that you want to make a film and a more of a logical type of reason that you should make a film when you're making a passion project, because it just takes so much out of you. And usually when you're also going to try to find the money, then it's just like, it's a long haul. So, and I sort of want to make sure that the director I'm working with has that. Oh, right.
Kristen's here. Hi, Kristen.
So I want to make sure that the director I'm working with has thought about that and has answers to that, and they can take time and that I vibe with that too. The way I go about budget is, essentially, I start breaking it down. If I have a client, then the easiest thing to do is start with can you give me a ballpark of how much you're willing to spend? Especially in the digital platform space, a lot of those projects aren't making any of their money back, right? Because think of all the things you watch on YouTube. People aren't really making money back.
Or it's minuscule.
Right. It's just, it doesn't matter. Maybe it's a lot. They're certainly not recouping their whole budget.
No.
So, and they're playing with usually venture capital money, or investor money of some other kind. And so they also have a number no matter what, this is the most amount of money we're willing to spend because this is the most amount of money we're willing to lose and never see again. So that's important, and then I look at it and I break down the budget and see whether or not that number is achievable. And then if I find that the number that they are looking for is so much lower than the number that is written on the page, then we have a creative conversation where we talk about how to bring the script to be more in line with the amount of money that they are looking for their way. So, which I've done before, we talk about this club was supposed to be a high-end luxury club. Maybe it's an underground club, that only street people go to. You know what I mean? Think about all the money we just saved. Locations, costumes, wardrobe. This was supposed to be a 100-person crowd. What if it's super select and only 10 people got invited? But that kind of stuff first. And then if that's not enough, then we start talking about cutting pages, cutting locations, cutting content. And nobody wants to cut content, so that I try to do that last. But so it's important to make the number they want to pay and they want to put towards and the script match, and then from there it's just simple budgeting. Do you want me to go into that kind of stuff?
We can talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
I like the bigger. It's good. We're gonna make our way in.
The 30,000 feet. Yeah.
How much do you like budget? Not really.
A lot of times producers will ask me
Further.
Thank you.
Knee distance.
All right,
Yeah.
I can do that. A lot of times producers will ask me as gaffer, oh, okay, we need this thing. It's kind of expensive. It's this new LED light, or it's a set of lenses that are hard to find or something, or it's something along those lines. It's specialty, whatever. How much do you think that's going to cost? Manpower obviously comes a lot into it when you're talking about how much something costs. When I'm looking at whether or not I want to do a project, actually a lot of times I'm looking at more how much manpower I'm going to have, sometimes even more than how much I'm going to make on it. Because I'm at the place where I'm looking for projects, and I'm sure this kind of ebbs and flows in different people's careers, and it certainly ebbs and flows in mine, but like I'm kind of in a place where I'm like, I'm fairly financially comfortable, and at this point I'm looking for more creative challenges. And typically when you get down to like my below the line level, particularly when I'm gaffing, how creative you can be tends to come down to like how much manpower you can get. Because if I've got 8 guys to like, or women, to like, if I've got half that crew that can come in and kind of lay things out, and then by the time we get to set, we can have moving lights on set, we can have LEDs, we can have RGB stuff, like we can have, light ribbon going everywhere. Like the more high tech we can make a set, a lot of times it brings tremendous production value that even lends itself to the production design. That's a lot of times where I decide I want to do a project or not, is like, how cool can we make this look? Because it looks better on my resume, so that maybe next time I'm in the phase of like looking for, I really want to start like building my income, I can come to a production and be like, well, I've done this with all this production value, and I was able to design all this,
Right.
and I'm worth it. Pay me double what the last project was.
Let's see. So I choose so many different reasons, but mostly story, honestly, and like what's cool, and like I like certain types of films and stories. It's a little predictable, but I love hero's journey. I love making people cry, but I also like comedies because those are lovely sets to be on. Turtle. Sorry, the dogs are here. Turtle, stop.
Is this Harlow or
This is
Turtle?
Harlow. We have Harlow and we have Turtle. Hi, sweet girl. Can you see
Hopefully you
her?
guys can tell I'm this dog.
She's cute.
Oh no!
They'll be able to see her. Harlow, off. Just say off. She'll just get off. Off.
I heard the rules.
Go. Can you go, please? Go. Harlow, go. She's like, they're touching me. Go. Sit down. Sit. Hey, can you sit down, please? Stay. So, generally, I'm looking for story, and I'm looking for, it's similar, actually, Olivia, although I do a significant amount of budgeting, because in addition to like DPing, I'm attached to direct some things, and those things I do end up budgeting a lot of times in super pre-production, because people will be looking to get money with me attached before they have they'll have producers attached, but they don't have the budget yet to hire a line producer to do a full breakdown. So a lot of times I will do the first pass, which I've actually heard of happens a lot in sort of like the Lifetime movie world. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's fascinating. So, and I do that a lot, actually. Out of necessity.
Assets, like you could get more money if you have a certain director attached. Because
Yeah.
they're better.
Well, I'm not there yet, but
They don't-
but yeah.
Well, people don't know that you're at that level. But you
I haven't. So a lot of times it's I'm looking at projects that are super cool, that I love, that I can see. For me, it makes a difference if like I read something and I can see it,
Oh, sure.
because I'm so visual that it's like, oh, I know how. It's such a big difference when you can see a script in your mind's eye, because you know how that story needs to be told. If you don't know how a scene should be told visually or emotionally, it's a lot more work to get there, because you have to sort of break down and do a lot more research and things like that. But if you can just see it already, you're like, oh, I know exactly what this needs to be. So yeah, and budgets. I can pretty much read a script and be like, this is about this. This is how much we could do it for, and this is how much we should do it for.
This is how much we will do.
Yeah. And yeah, please raise more money. Okay, so let's talk about. So we're gonna kind of get into like how different elements affect an actual line out budget. You guys good with that? So just talking about like different types of projects first of all. Different types of projects first of all. So like if you were gonna do like a high level web series, digital series, or if you were gonna do a like a indie feature versus, I don't know, so we'll do those two. Okay, like a digital series versus an indie feature. So, first of all, how do you decide how many days you're going to shoot? For me, obviously, I mean, like I go through the script, tag it up, do the schedule, and then see what makes sense. I have personal preferences about location changes, which is that I hate them, and so I try to avoid that at all cost. Because it's horrible. You just lose so many
in the middle
hours.
of the day, or you mean in, through the whole shoot?
No. In the like 2 locations in one day.
Oh, come on! Nobody
Like-
does a company move.
A lot of people do a company move.
Yes, they do.
Ask Olivia. Oh, but they do.
You're an angel if you don't.
Yeah.
I do when I write something that I'm also going to produce. Oh, I didn't mean to steal it.
No, that's go. It's
Uh,
a conversation.
So when I write something that I also am going to produce, like for example, what I just finished scripts on, and then we're in pre-pro. When I was writing it, I was like, I co-wrote it with the director, and we already knew, once we're at a new location, no less than 7 pages, no more than 9.5. And that's because, him and I have worked together a lot. So his name's Jeff Jenkins. So Jeff and I have worked together a lot, and we know that we can move at that pace. That is still like a breakneck speed. 6 pages a day is great, but we're usually doing 8 or 9. And so I write that way. Like, we're gonna have a party scene. This party's 9 pages long. We're gonna go and do this one thing, and if it's gonna be longer, then it's gonna be 14 to 18.
Right.
I'm buying the days.
That's very smart.
So we have a 20-day shoot coming up, and out of the 20 days, we have 2 days that would have a company move in the middle, and I'm actually seeking locations that can double the spaces so that we actually don't have a company move. Or if we do, it's minimal. So yeah, it'll be 18 days without company moves, 2 days maybe. And that's already but to get 20 days and only have to have 2 days where you have to move a little,
That's phenomenal.
yeah. So what were we supposed to be talking about?
We're talking about how do you decide on the number of days.
Oh, I do the page count. And then after doing the page count, I also consider hey, there's a page roughly, like I said, 7 to 9.5, 7 to 9, and then this crazy thing happens. That's a 4-page day.
Yeah.
So yeah, but if it's 2 people talking in a room in the living room, if this is what we're shooting,
Oh yeah, you do 20 pages.
I would cap it at 14, but.
Put
But
3 cameras out
but
there.
right, but then that just changed the budget.
Yeah, that's
So then it's then you're looking at how much do you want to try to shoot in a day? There's a lot of different ways to go about it.
On the questions is talk about, which you can also talk about this in your talks, is how does the number of crew affect the speed at which you can shoot and the quality which you sort of spoke about earlier.
Yeah.
For example, I just said put 3 cameras out there. Well, that adds 2 other camera units to your 1 unit that you have. So that does give you more people, but it allows you to shoot 3 angles at the same time, which means you're shooting theoretically faster.
But you added your people and you also added your gear.
And the gear, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's also to me, my opinion on that, and from a different angle, is that let's say you put 3 cameras in this room right now, are you going to be able to get your best lighting?
Right, and that's
because if you're only
The answer is no.
The answer is right. It's an obvious question, right? Because if you're lighting for 1 angle, you can get really great lighting. If you're lighting for 3, you're kind of washing the room. So then I don't know. I actually would almost never do more than 1 camera for the type of stuff that I'm shooting.
And then talk about what Olivia was talking about, which is adding where you would normally run with I don't know, 3 grips, or we'll say, and a couple of G&E. Would you, if you have a crazy day, would you rather the day go long or get less pages in, or add a few grips?
I'd rather add a few. I'd rather add crew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would always add
Yeah,
crew.
yeah.
Do you want to talk about adding crew?
Oh.
Yeah, Miriam,
Yeah,
get down in
I feel
there.
like I'm talking.
Yes. I feel like everybody always, at the budget levels that I work with in independent film, they want to work with a skeleton crew, and it's very hard to talk to the writer director into, you know, getting additional budget towards crew, and just having them understand how much faster we can move if it's if we have more people being hands-on, if we have a more experienced crew, if we're hiring a DP that brings their own team and, you know, their own rates and whatever that may be, versus finding people for them at lower rates, and how much that can trip up people and slow down production. Just trying to talk through that kind of stuff is really difficult. And it's hard to get people to understand that that actually affects the visual of the story. It affects the story itself and the story that you're trying to tell. It's not going to be what you're thinking in your head, because you're going to have so many obstacles trying to, you know, getting in the way of the vision that you have. And the best way to clear that up is to just hire experienced people, and have more people on set to go from one setup to another. And I know people always come down to what's the lowest level we could do this at. But they really need to be more strategic, because they're not going to want to do more days versus having people on set. You're going to get tired. You're not going to be on top of your game. Like, the best way to do it is go in and out and do it as quickly as possible. At least that's how I feel about it.
Actually brings up a really good point of like what
You're the one who said we had to use the mic.
I know. It's such better. I think it's better audio quality from my like weird reverby tests I was doing. So it brings up a good point of like that honestly is sort of the point of this whole live stream is my. I was sort of at a point where I was frustrated taking a lot of meetings with people, and what was frustrating me was as a DP, you often will have a meeting with people very early on in the process of the whole situation. Like, sometimes people come to me before they even have a producer, because they love whatever my look is, and they want to sort of chat with me about overall ways to shoot something, and that might affect the budget and their vision of the film at large. So, and sometimes I get into conversations with those people about day rate versus kit, and I swear to you, this is why this has started, because this is why this whole live stream started, because of the number of times I've had to explain the difference between, for a cinematographer, Olivia knows, of how much you pay a person and how much that the gear comes, because a lot of times crew own gear, and with DPs they expect your day rate to include your camera and everything else.
No.
I know. That's why there's a live stream happening.
Yeah, lots of people.
90% of the people I sit down with.
The first timers.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's important that like we have grace for that.
Like super indie world.
Yeah, like we have grace for that, but we also can't really tolerate it, because that makes me not able to afford my rent and live here and make your movie.
Yeah.
So we do really like.
But we can just talk about that. Let's I don't want it to be like mad. It's more just like I wanted to, when I see something as a theme, I'm very big picture, where I'm like, this as a systemic issue needs to be addressed. So I just want to talk about that briefly. But also I want to talk about things that you guys hear when you're taking meetings. We're all in different situations all the time, that, like you were saying, people will want to do skeleton crew. And you have to be like, well, but here's the problem with that, you know? So me personally, there's obviously, when you're hiring a cinematographer / DP, there's your day rate, which is how much the labor is, and then there's the gear rate. And so...
Can I just clarify? The only crew member I feel that their day rate includes their gear is the sound. I believe that sound.
Yeah, it sort of does, unless you're including like extra lobs and stuff. But
No,
yeah,
if you're like, hey, can you bring like 3 contacts and then an extra 10 lobs that you're gonna have to rent? Like, we'll rent those. But
right.
I do feel that the sound mixer, and honestly, that's why the sound mixer usually has a really good day rate.
Yeah.
Because it is coming with their gear.
Yeah, and that's true. And that's because their gear, though, is pretty consistent across the board.
Yeah,
of what
it's
you
like,
can expect.
This is my gear.
And it's been around, that technology. Like, cameras are like every year it's a new camera.
Yeah.
But no, I totally agree with you on that. And if anyone is disagreeing, they can feel free to chat.
I would like to hear that. Because sound is like a hard one to translate to. But I do.
But yeah, so there's, just to break it down, there's labor, there's kit, and then there's gear rentals. So labor is your day rate for however many hours, which is not broken down into hourly, by the way, if anyone's thinking that, I mean, it is ultimately, but whenever you're offered a rate, it's something for like 10 hours or 12 hours or whatever. And then there's your kit, which you find less with DPs and more with like first and second ACs, or possibly even camera PAs, DITs, things like that, because they're bringing a laptop. It's sort of like on your taxes when you're taking mileage. Is like the best.
That's a good way to say it.
Way to, because they're using their laptop for drives and laptops only spin a certain number of rotations, and so it's like wear and tear kit fee. So like I have a kit fee for whenever I'm doing certain jobs and it's like all of the things that are going to save the day, right? And it's not very much, but that's a kit fee. So sometimes people will like include that in their rate, or when you're budgeting, a lot of times you'll just say you have $500 for a second AC, and that person is going to bring their kit, which involves like, I don't know, a cart or something like that. Just take off that $500 and offer them slightly less, so you can offer them also a kit fee, right? You're not spending more, but that's basically what people do in your mind, so that you're not shocked when that happens, which happens sometimes. And then gear is then like all of the gear that is brought to set. Those things are rented for, like, a lot of times a DP will own a camera, will own some lenses, possibly lights, monitors, wireless video. These are all the things that I own, but I'm like a big gearhead. So, but in any world, you would be going to a rental house to rent these things. If a DP owns those things, it's essentially like going through them as the rental house. You'll often get a much cheaper rate by going through them, and they know all of the gear as well, which is a huge plus. The thing is that people don't a lot of times think about is that different DPs own different cameras, so just by that nature, you're going to sort of get the camera that they have. If you don't really have an opinion about what camera, then I would say maybe go back and like try to have an opinion about what kind of camera, and there's a lot of ways you can do that can be talked about later, but that's sort of something you want to come into, because if you're looking to shoot on an Alexa, that's going to cost you something different than if you're looking to shoot on a C200, for example, which are the two cameras that Olivia and I own, or a Blackmagic Pocket 6K, whatever these that people are shooting on now. So those are like a very wide swath of rental rates for those cameras, and you're going to get significantly different quality from all of them. And really, ultimately, it's about where your project is going to go. Like if it's just going to live on you, if it's going to be like this, like a live stream, do it on whatever, your iPhone. It doesn't, ultimately, and it depends on who you're doing it for, but you know what I'm saying. So anyway, that's just like a basic way to look at all of those things. And lenses, like I talk to a lot of people about lenses, and because I'm very staunchly in what I would call like sort of the cutting edge indie scripted world, a lot of things that I'm shooting are on vintage lenses, vintage anamorphic, really interesting glass and sphericals, something with like a lot of cream to it, just really interesting glass. On the shoots that I'm doing, you're never going to accidentally end up with just some set of glass. Like, it's always intentionally chosen. So when that is the case, you're often looking at quite possibly a higher day rate for that glass than the camera itself, because the two of them combined is what makes these beautiful images. It's not ever an accident. So, and then if you're looking for specific shots, specific angles, specific movement, those are all pieces of gear that have to sort of sing together in the orchestra. And each of those things individually is going to cost money as well. So that's definitely something to talk to your producer and your DP about, but it's not a thing where you hire a DP and then you have all of your gear. Just to clear that up for anyone who thought that might be the case. I have a lot to say about that.
I'll speak a little bit more about how I feel like you get one pass, like from all you, like say you're like, you just finished film school and you want to do your thing, like your first thing. I think you can round up all your friends and be like, hey, let's make something. Let's work for free.
Oh, yeah.
We'll all get something out of this. You could do that one time. And I feel like you could crowdfund with the same, pool of social media people you have one time.
Let me just pause really quick.
Yeah.
So Nick just commented. Nick is my husband. He's wonderful. And he's a line producer. And he has a lot of friends that are sound people. And so he wanted to comment about the sound rate. So he says, sound day rate and kit rental should always be separated. There are different line items on the Movie Magic scheduling. I mean, Nick budgets for like massive shoots. Labor is labor, gear is gear. I have a number of sound mixer friends who find producers trying to haggle their rate down, and not separating the two can lead to a lot of friction. Okay, so that's just a conversation to have with your sound mixer about the day rate. Then it'd be exactly the same situation as everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, it might be. I am not currently producing like big feature films or television, and so budgeting certainly changes once you've moved up. And right now, that's usually how I budget it. Is the sound is the day rate and it includes their gear. And I guess I would say like the people that I'm hiring are okay with that, but I was just having this conversation with someone. Like, I currently am at the point where I'm producing at a level where the people I can hire are willing to work not only for this rate, but like at this pace, right? Like, it's someone who's willing to work with a smaller crew and have that look, or with a shoot 9 pages a day and move all over one location and do that kind of stuff. And so my crews have a tendency to be pretty young. And right now my budgets keep getting bigger, but they're getting bigger because the length of the shoot is bigger, or the project itself is bigger. However, the day rates are not increasing. So that is troublesome, because I would like to work on bigger and bigger projects and have the whole project increase. Because I want to grow with my crew. I don't want all my crew to constantly age out of me. And there are people I really like to stick with, and I'm already finding that there are a couple people who worked with me for maybe a year and a half, and they're like, I can't really work at that rate anymore. And I'm like, and you know what? I completely understand that. So, yeah, I don't know. Is that another question?
No, it's my mom saying, oh, great. Thanks, Mom. Summer says hi, too. Summer. Hi, Summer. No, I think that's fair. And Nick, thank you for your input. That's very helpful, because obviously, like, I think it's important to point out, like, wherever you're working in sort of this industry, you're going to have exactly that same experience. It's not that your project cannot be made, it's that it's at what level.
Right, and it's important. I think it's important to know where it can go. It's important to know that on some sets they pass out platters of sushi, so that one day you can be budgeting platters of sushi.
Or like little smoothies. Those are so nice. Yeah.
I've actually done the wheatgrass shots before.
Those are really great.
But like, it's important to know. I know. It's better. But it's important to know how high the ceiling can be, so that when people ask for more, you can say, yes, I do want to give you $100 a day in expendables for all of your own tape.
So much tape.
But
Like that.
I can only give you $100 for the entire shoot for your tape.
Oof.
Right? Like you.
But
But
go,
$0 for
but
tape.
you can go. But yeah, that's a great opportunity for you to go. You know, I can make that work. When we run out of tape, we run out of tape,
yeah.
and we'll just stop doing that. But now you know, and now we're still good.
Right, and there's the moment of like, I know that I should pay you for that, and I know that that's a resource we need, and we unfortunately just can't do that, and do you still want to do the job? And so I feel like
the key is like total transparency with all of those things.
and there are the times that trip me up is when I'm like, I haven't been producing for forever. And my projects keep getting bigger, but there are moments where I just had a conversation with a costume designer. I said, I've never done a shoot this big, this long. Tell me something that I know that I am not accounting for.
Then I'm gonna mess it up.
That's really smart.
And I said, we haven't even hired you yet. I'm trying to hire you. Tell me what I'm not accounting for. And she said, you are not accounting for all of the laundry. And I said, I am absolutely not accounting for all of the laundry. And I said, tell me what else. And she said, on shoots this small, because we've worked together a bunch of times, on shoots of this size, with this many characters, wardrobe keeps the costumes in our car. And I said, yes, they do. And she said, on a shoot that long, wardrobe should not keep the costumes in that car because it's a liability and something could happen over that many days. And I was like, I didn't,
Yeah.
my mind
Thank
is
you,
not.
madam.
And so there is a ton of stuff in every department that I am, when the project gets bigger, it's like, oh, well, no one's ever told me that I should pay you for that, probably because they were like, it's just 2 days. They didn't offer me money for it. It doesn't matter.
Which does happen a lot. Yeah.
But it's like, oh no, it's 20 days. Now you need to pay me for that because it will be a huge expense to me.
Yeah.
And
Tape
so
is a great example of that.
what?
Tape is a great example.
And tape is a great example because, like, on a lot of 3-day shoots, people will be like, "No, you don't have to pay me for tape."
Yeah.
And
We end up with enough tape that a few days shoot is whatever.
but the thing is like, I will be honest, on a lot of 3-day shoots, as you were talking about kit fees, with a lot of the crew, people don't usually. I would say art department, like. There's always a kit fee for hair and makeup, right? But like an art department, there's usually a kit fee. But a lot of crews will say like, nah, no kit fee on a 3-day shoot. And then as the shoot gets bigger and bigger, then there ends up being kit fees. And so there are some times where it's harder to know to be able to see those things coming up when your projects get bigger and you haven't done something yet.
Well, let me just really to touch on the kit fee. So the reason that kit fee is important is that it's taxed differently.
Yes.
Right.
So a lot of times, like, my kit will go on my invoice on various things. If that's just paid, there's separate places to pay it, however you pay people. If it's paid as part of my salary, that is taxed at, like, having to pay into pension and health and pay into all of these, like, big things. If it's just my kit, then it's just taxed as base income. It's not taxed as having to pay all of those, like, employee taxes, basically. So that's why also, because it's gear, it's not labor. So that's important to note.
You can also just always say to the producer, like, hey, you're saying that's how much you have to pay for a day.
Yeah.
Can we bring my rate down and then can you pay me a kit fee?
That's what I do.
And I do that with people all the time.
Yeah.
I say, like, this is the keys rate right now.
Yeah.
Like, and I also try to make all my keys across the board make the same amount of money.
Smart.
Because at the level that I'm at. So if my keys are all making the same amount of money, but if a key says to me, hey, can you pay me $20 less a day and then put all that into a kit fee? Why? Sure.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't change anything to me. So
It actually does. It makes you guys pay less pay.
It actually does.
it does, yes. Now, which we could get into a whole payroll conversation, but I don't really want
Let's
to.
not, because
I really don't want to.
we have neighbors listening.
I'm gonna give this back.
Go, and Miriam, go back to what you were talking about before.
What was I talking about
Things
before?
that come up a lot when you're talking to people, like we were talking about skeleton crews and wanting to have the right number of people, but just anything that comes up when you're having meetings with people that you're like, I know you think it's this, but it's not necessarily that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I was talking about how I feel like you get one, like, freebie. Oh, whoa.
Let's continue. One of the it's fine.
It's got moody in here.
Yeah. You get one favor, from your, film friends, contacts, whatever. But I would say, like you mentioned, I think people grow out of those, like the green roles very quickly. And I think you have to respect people's rates and don't try to be like, hey, but you did me a favor on the first one. Why can't we do it again? And that's just not how it works. This is how we make a living. And I feel like being in film, there's sort of this air of like, oh, you're doing something fun and it's like so cool that you get to make a movie for work. But I don't think people respect that it is a job and work and that you should be paid to earn a living. That's the part where I'm like, why does that come as a surprise to you? Like, I don't get that. So yeah, I would just say be respectful of people's rates, and just be as upfront as possible about the type of project you're trying to make, and also be honest about that with yourself. If you know that you're going to have to hire a crew that's not as experienced, just know that that's going to affect the look of the film, the final product of the film. And if that's all you can afford at the time, that's completely fine. Like, that's not a big deal. But have realistic expectations when you're going into it and hiring people and working around the budget in that sense.
Can I tell you guys a mini story, and then it's not really a story, give you a situation that happened to me, and then I want to hear how all three of you would handle it. I really am curious.
Hypothetical.
It's a hypothetical. It's a hypothetical. It never happened.
Let's hear
Get some
it.
more coffee?
I feel like
I'm
this should
good.
be like when we turn this into like a talk show. This will be like where like the logo spins and it'll be like Chelsea Thetical.
I can make that happen.
Please. Oh, that'd be so cool.
Can we get like that Orbit commercial?
I can do all that. Yeah.
Here's my hypothetical.
Yes.
Okay.
We're ready.
So we've got a budget. This is what we've got. We know it's not enough money for what we're trying to do. You know, we just know it. But we also know that we can make it happen. And we find a DP who's hungry for this project. And everybody is hungry for things for different reasons, which is why you should never rule anyone out. Never say, oh, this person is too big, they have way too much experience, because you never know where they're at in their career. And they may have literally just said, you know, I've never DP'd something sci-fi, and like I need that on my reel. And maybe they will take that super low rate because they just need that on their reel.
It happens.
So
We also just love working. Like,
right.
all the time.
There's also people who just love to work, and they're just like, it's not enough money, but I don't have anything else to do. I really want to work. So like, never rule anybody out. But let's say you find a DP who really is hungry for this gig and wants to take it, and it is lower than anything they ever usually do. And then you, as a producer, really try to reinforce the idea that if they bring on a crew, they have to bring on a crew who understands what the project is. And if this DP never works at this level, our assumption is that their crews don't really work at this level.
That's a good assumption.
And you say as a producer, can you, DP, guarantee me that if you bring on your crew, they will be comfortable with this? And they say yes. And then you are on set and they are not comfortable with this.
To what extent? Like, how are you feeling that they're not comfortable with this? You're getting like comments.
You're getting like comments that then turn into like, we've been talking and we have some things we need to say.
Oh my.
So my question is like, I want to trust my department heads. As a producer, I really try to empower all my department heads to please hire your own crew. Please don't make me put people that you're uncomfortable with on your crew, or that you just never worked with. And like, people love their own crew.
Yep.
But like, if you take a gig that you are comfortable with working with, but your crew is not, then like, in that scenario, would you choose to believe them, or would you take that power away from them and say, I will staff your crew?
Oh. Well, I know. I mean.
And then so I guess that's a really good question for you as a producer.
Yeah.
And then for you guys, when you take gigs that you are not usually, you're working at a lower level than you normally would, how do you handle that as a gaffer and a DP? Like,
I'm trying to think like what happened in that last one that we worked on.
She's like, let me just rewind.
Yeah.
What happened to me?
Yeah, I have been on a set where that happened, but I I don't know. That's really tough because I do feel like it kind of falls on, the department head at that point because they didn't effectively communicate what to expect on set for their team. And I would probably have a conversation with the department head, and then hopefully they can talk to their crew. Like, I would try to do that first, especially if it's people that they brought on. Like, the last thing I'd want to do is, try and replace them. Like, that would be really terrible. But if it had to come down to it, then yes. Like, if it was that uncomfortable on set where it was getting in the way of work,
I guess, yeah, if you were like day 3 of a 3-month shoot, you would replace. But
Yeah.
if you were on day 4 of a day 5 shoot, you would not replace.
No.
right? So I don't know. That's a good hypothetical. It just comes down to communication. I would just hope that the department head would
Got some shit
communicate.
to say about this.
Yeah.
So I've also produced indie stuff where I'm not DPing, and it has happened to me. And since that moment, which is like the worst feeling of all time,
Right. Because it's also a moment where a bunch of people come to you and they're like, "You've duped us."
right. And that's not the case. Like,
Right.
you've
You're like,
communicated
yeah.
to
Oh, no.
the department head what the
Right.
rates are. That department head would, this exact thing happened to me. The department head brought on people, and then when it went to pay them, we went to pay them, they were like, this is not even close to the rate I work for. And I'm like,
Whoa.
Oh gosh.
so since that moment, if I'm not the department head of whatever, but I'm in charge of ultimately paying them, which happens sometimes on the stuff I'm on, if I leave it to someone else to hire them, I make
Confirm the
sure
rates.
I get their email.
Yeah.
I say great, and so then they email me. I say, okay, hi, just want to make sure this is the rate, this is the number of hours, this is the available kit that we have. This is the gear we're still looking for. If you own any of it, we're happy to work out a rental rate with you on that. But regardless, just want to make sure you're good with that.
Yeah. I always confirm rates.
As far as being a DP goes, I work with a lot of different crews, so I'm not union yet. So I have a very wide swath of crew to pull from. I also started a Facebook group called She Crew that is international now. We have thousands and thousands of members. That's supposed to be that it's not difficult to it's really not that difficult to find women to work on your sets. If you just take 16 seconds longer to look. So that's for that. So I can post there if I have a job, and there's a rule about no shaming about rates, because sometimes on these forums you'll get shamed if it's a certain number of dollars. As long as it's legal rate on that forum.
Maybe you should get a talking to, but not shame.
A private one in your own home. I don't know.
In your inbox.
But for me, it's the thing where it's the same deal. Sometimes it's a baby crew member who does want to go do something, and it's not going to be a hard shoot. They have to pick up some C-stands. Nobody's going to bring the train down by doing that the wrong direction. Might be slower, but so yeah. Basically, I always ask the producer, and I always talk very closely with how much money is available overall a lot of times too, because I know sometimes it'll be a more complicated shoot, so I want a more accomplished first AC to focus, but it won't be necessarily difficult on the electric side, for example. So sometimes producers will give me each person's rate, and sometimes we'll be okay, well, what's the total amount you have for labor and for gear? And then I also have a lot of friends in LA that run different rental houses too. So if it's specific gear, I can be hey, yo, can you split that lens set up so we only take 2 lengths instead of the whole set? And because I've been renting from these people for a long time, they will do that.
Right.
Depending on the length of the shoot and if it's being, popular. K35s, you can't do that. Sorry. But yeah, no, I mean, if people tell me the rate, I make sure that the people... Olivia's been on the end of my texts where I basically just say, hey, I have a thing. This is the rate. Are you interested? And she either says yes or no. So,
I've rented from you, and I feel like we've done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the best thing you can do is send out a deal memo, and it's got either W9, W4, whatever it is you're doing, and it's clear and it goes out whatever ahead of time,
This says, tell us about deal memos.
Hey, deal memos. Okay, so deal memos are a hopefully like legal in written payment document of like when you're going to get paid, how much you're going to get paid. Deal memo packages a lot of times include whether or not there's workers' compensation, like kind of stuff like that. It's kind of it's called start paperwork. And in your start paperwork, unless you're hiring day players, like this is really a situation where sometimes like I could see this happening to like a day player who like somebody has called in a favor and been like,
It's morning of.
or it's morning of, something like that, like, which is rare, but day players are very common because it's awesome. But day playing is great. It's a great way to maintain your healthy stress levels, and I do it a lot. So, but yeah, I would say, if you come to a shoot and everybody kind of knows what's up, and you still get a list of demands that comes to you in a really abrupt way, day of, I would say the best thing that you can do is a respectful face-to-face conversation of like, okay, we respect your professionalism. If there's anything obvious that we're missing, you can let us know. But like, okay, so maybe I've been on sets where like you show up and you're in the desert and you're like, there's no water on set?
Oh.
Like that happens. Yeah. So I would say if a crew and like they're not your wonderful quality of producership, they're like,
Oh, you
this
don't
is
work with me. I could be terrible. You don't know.
Oh,
She's
maybe.
not. She's great.
I'll give you a chance.
She's one of my favorite producers.
Oh.
Seriously. No, I'm serious. I tell her to do that.
Oh, stop.
No, serious, because like shit can be hitting the fan, and she's like, it's fine. Or if it seems like it's all good, she's like, I'm also taking care of things you don't even know about. Great.
I believe that, and that's actually really obvious that you are that way. But yeah, like you show up in the desert and there's no water on set, or like you show up and like the food is cold and inedible every day at lunch, and you haven't warned people to bring lunches or to eat out or something like that, and a lot of times, honestly, if you get to the point that a crew is coming up and telling you, that's actually better than if they're grumbling behind the scenes and you don't know it. So it's scary, but it's probably a good sign because they do want to talk to you. And then at that point, like, just respect and apologies is probably the best thing you can do. Like, if you are that producer that shows up on set and something broke down and you can't get water to set, respect and apologies and safety. Safety, because that's a lot of times when people do get freaked out. Like if you show up and your day rate is $25 less than you thought it was because you didn't read the deal memo correctly, but that's tough. You signed it, and like we can say.
Right, so just point out the deal memo thing. So you send it, they sign it, and
send it, sign it. It comes in the email.
Sign it, and then if there are discrepancies at the back end, you have signed the deal memo. Sometimes deal memos will go out, people don't sign them. They can be like, I never got it.
Yeah, but that's
So
not
just
because you want to remove as much.
To wrap up the deal memo talk.
Yeah, deal memos are just they're like sometimes like they should be like go through the regular legal processes and stuff. Like if you have a production lawyer or any kind of lawyer, that's a good thing to send through the lawyer or through your payroll company or whatever, just to make sure that like everything looks right. A lot of times they like a deal memo will come in a package that includes, like I said, workers' compensation, NDAs, W-4, W-9, contact sheet, emergency contacts. Like that's a lot of times it almost comes in like a little stack that looks like an 8x11 Bible. It's real thick. But that's.
So let's bring it back to budgeting because we were talking about.
Okay, yes, but
let's
budgeting.
talk about budgeting for safety. I'm gonna fix that light again. Continue.
Budgeting for safety, you said?
Yeah, like how do you make sure that you're safe at budgeting?
Yeah. Okay. So that's going to be a point where, if you
Like a medic or a water truck.
like a medic. So that is one of the things that is really nice about being on union sets is union contracts require you to have medics on set.
All the time, yeah.
All the time.
Which is nice.
But we get that, like, I would really hope I'm working for a producer that wants to have a medic on set as much as possible. But I do work on a lot of sets where it's like we have a stunt day or we have a desert day or something like that, and we are trying to make this work, we can only afford to have a medic on set on days where there's kids or a stunt or a desert or water or whatever. Okay, cool, we get that. But that is something you should think about. If you have a day that's really crazy where you've got, I don't know, aerobics or people flying through the air or something, or a condor, you know, I've been on little teeny tiny features that have money for a condor. They've saved up the whole time. But that's a day when you want to have a medic, because God forbid something happens, you know, that's not something that somebody can wait for an ambulance for. You really need to save somebody's life right there. Yeah, have a medic on set. Water.
You should just never run out of water.
You should never run out of water. It's so obvious that it gets missed. And I get that. But that's something, you know, it's not something you have to like...
How often are you on a set where you run out of water?
Not anymore. Because generally I'm on union sets.
Okay.
But I've had days where they show up and maybe they only have like teeny tiny cups and go drink out of the sink or something. Like they're going to be really cheap, and they kind of mask it, and we're trying to be green. And you're like, no, you're not. You're trying to be cheap.
Yeah.
That's a no-no.
I'll also just point out, if we're talking about crafty, the camera department will never, like, we have maybe 13 seconds to get to crafty. So in those 13 seconds, we really, really love it if there's something there. Anything, really.
I mean, protein. Like
That happens to me, I would say, on 90% of sets, is that I have 13 seconds to run over there because I'm dying of thirst or hunger, I'm hangry, or need a sticker to eat it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and there's just, it's like wilted lettuce and some like hot LaCroix. And I'm like,
Yes. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's important. Like, we're coming, like, for real. We are coming into the summer. Climate change is a thing. It gets freaking 110 degrees in the valley in the summer, and it stays that way for a very long time. Make sure there's protein and make sure there's water.
yeah.
A friend of mine was on a set in the Mojave or Joshua Tree, something like.
desert stuff going on.
There's a lot of, and I don't know why the desert is popular in the summer. It's the worst possible time.
February, you guys.
Shoot it in February,
Because
you
it'll
guys.
still look like the sun.
It
Slightly
looks the
shorter
same
days,
all
but
the
it's fine.
time. Nothing grows there. It always looks the same. Shoot in February. I think people shoot in the summer in the desert because, for whatever reason, it's cheaper.
I still think budgets come together for the summers more than
They do, and the winter is very busy in Los Angeles. Like September through March is insane. So I don't know what other markets are like, but like Los Angeles talking, it's expensive. You either your location's more expensive or you have to pay people more. I get it, but please don't go in the summer in July. Please.
Okay, pass the mic, Olivia.
Well, I will say one last thing. A friend of mine's in the desert in Mojave. She said it was one of the best sets she's ever been on. Should have been the worst conditions, but they passed out bottles of water with, lemon droplets in it every 15 minutes or every hour. I can't remember. It was some really efficient. They took 3 hours off in the middle of the day, and then they came back to shoot the rest of the day because the days are long enough that you can do stuff like that.
That's a great idea.
That's all I'll say about that.
That's amazing.
Next.
Oh.
What are we doing?
I don't know. I'm gonna look and see what else we have. I know.
Someone said it should be a monthly thing. I agree.
What should be a
Oh yeah, Somerset. Summer, you want to come help us make it a monthly thing?
Summer should be here.
Couldn't we run out of stuff to talk about?
No. No, not even close. Okay, well, let's talk about budgeting for post then,
Oh,
and what people forget about.
everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
I just opened a can of worms.
Okay, so my husband is a sound mixer.
Yeah,
So,
that's helpful for you.
as I have found that I was one of the few producers at when I first started that was like, no, there has to be money for post sound. Because I have a husband who's like, there has to be money for post sound. I think people forget it. I think that it's at the budget level that I'm at, the budget for post does not match the budget for production. But in high level stuff, it should actually be closer. Right now that's not where I'm at, because right now, my editing, my sound, I usually have like one person in each department. This next project I'm up at, we're splitting sound in half. So we have two people, we're splitting editing in half with two people. but lots of times my editor is also the post supervisor, is also doing the final conform. It's like that kind of stuff. So where you're missing, your crew has gotten smaller. You're doing like really skeleton for post usually. So the rates end up being not as what they should be, because people will be like, oh, if I'm doing all of it, I'll take a one lump sum kind of stuff. And there's just less money to put in post. So, but I think people forget that my belief, and I'm saying this in front of both of you two, is that an audience will forgive something they see that doesn't look great. They will forgive that way sooner than they will forgive bad sound that they can hear. Because
I mean, I'll disagree, but I have to because it's
right. But what
I say they're equal.
What I mean by that is that there's either bad sound or there's good sound. Mm-hmm. There's not very rarely is there creative sound. Okay? But there is not bad camera work and good camera work. We went for the shaky cam because we wanted it, or we shot everything in a weird slow pan the whole time because we wanted it. Yeah. And there's also like lighting that you can dislike, or you can even color your film in a different way that people will not really care for but was an artistic choice, or you had a cheap colorist, like that stuff,
or you just put a 709 on it,
like a 709 on it.
Done.
So but like
put it out in log. Please stop putting things online in log color.
What is in log?
So, well, I mean, this is my pet peeve. So, log color, you shoot a film, and on your monitor, you're seeing it like sort of pre-colored-ish looking, because that's a LUT. It's a lookup table. But the actual footage is in log, which is the full range of, so it's like,
raw. It's not the same.
no, raw is the recording format. Log is the, I mean, sure, you can call it raw, whatever you want to call it.
If you shoot in log or in raw, it's going to come out very desaturated.
It's like
very
flat,
contrasted,
because it's retaining all of that data and values of your highlights and your darks, so that when you go to color it, you can do whatever you want with it.
Okay, but do you use the word log?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I would rather have the right.
I call it, log is, if you say raw, it could mean a number of things, technically. Log means one thing.
Okay.
So, but log also, there's like different versions of it. But if you say log, that means that. But it's that flat look.
Camera formats.
No, not doing that. Log is like that really, really, the like super flat look, you know? So I've seen a lot of people where it's like they'll put a trailer out in log.
Yes, it's gross.
You guys,
It's gross.
like that's not an okay thing to do, period. Mm-hmm. Like, because everyone who looks at it from our department is like, what is...
Why did they do that?
Why did they put that out in log?
They want to sell it, right?
It just doesn't look right. It just doesn't look right.
And like, so we say
Just
this,
have some camera department person
Yes.
look at your shit before you put it on log.
yeah,
That's all.
We say
That's
this
all.
because
We want to help you.
we want to help
I'm
you.
used to inviting DP to the color sessions.
Yeah.
Is that not?
That's a thing that happens.
Yeah.
So then why?
I go to almost
why
all
would
of
something go out?
because they don't
Because
invite us.
because we don't get invited.
Okay, that's what's happening.
They should invite us, but also sometimes like you'll go through and you'll have like, so say for example you'll have like the locked feature length thing, right? And I get invited to the color session for that, and then the trailer is being cut while that's being colored,
Oh.
and then they don't replace those clips with the colored version before it goes online,
Oh.
right?
And a DP doesn't like.
And they
not
won't
in that
necessarily
circle
even
of
color the trailer, or you know what I mean? They just forgot.
But DP's no longer. In
Right.
the-
We want to be a part of it.
Right, but
But-
everybody's always like, "Oh, you're on another gig."
Yeah. Sometimes I'm in Miami shooting. Like I'm not.
Well, yeah, and like good. I mean, like we get it sometimes. Like sometimes you go, okay, we spent the shooting budget. We have very little post budget.
Sure.
We don't have the money to bring you in to finish this, and there's things you can do in post-production or pre-production to prevent that from happening. Like maybe you make a shooting lookup table,
Yeah, which I do a lot.
which happens a lot, where
And then
like
the colorist will sort of go off of that.
yes, and color
And then
correct
you're
it
backing
for
yourself
what's
into something really cool.
yes. And so like basically what that process looks like is there's a lot of things that you can prevent in post-production, in pre-production. So you're getting your feature together, you have all your money, you're starting to go into pre-production, you have your DP, you have maybe your editor locked in, and maybe at this point you have your colorist. One of the best things that you can do is sit your DP and your colorist and your editor down together and let them have a quick, kid you not, like half-hour conversation about what, or an email thread about what formats. And I mean, your DP's probably going to ask to do this already, but if they're too busy, I don't know. It's just nice if somebody says, hey, I planned this day for you guys to meet.
Things. Like, I would assume if no one has the conversation with me and I'm like back to back to back jobs, my assumption would be that you're going to want to shoot in the raw, biggest format, most amount of data, but you might not have those hard drives, that amount of space. But that's going to be because I'm like, I want to give you all of the possible options. But if you want to shoot, like most TV shoot, do you remember? Most TV shows shoot in ProRes and in 1920 already. Like, they're not going to be in 4.6K in RAW.
Like all my
in RAW?
are 4K. Not RAW.
But ProRes 4K.
ProRes 4K.
Right. So, okay, fine, yeah. But, like, that's a totally different compression.
That they just don't space.
Just volume, just size. And also, like, ProRes is great if you have a competent DP who has backed themselves into a lot that, like, you don't need the entire gamut of all exposure and extra space in your frame. Like, that's in case someone is not really great and you need to crop in and reframe it or something.
Did you know? So I did Susie Sunshine and Sarah actually was in it, and I went.
Last thing I think that was the last thing I was in, honestly.
Really?
Yeah.
The last thing I was in was before that.
Yeah. I stopped all that a long time ago.
Yeah, me too. But after the second day of filming, I was directing and hadn't shot with anything as exciting as we shot on Alexa, and I was like very excited. And on the second day, I went home and watched the dailies. And for some reason, on the first day, I went home and watched the dailies, and this didn't happen. But on the second day, I went home and we were shooting on a standing set, and that we built, and I panicked because you could see off the set.
Yeah.
Because I did not understand that my aspect ratio was the hero one. On the monitor. Yeah. They had taped the monitor so that I was seeing what we were finishing in.
Right, yeah.
So when I'm looking at the dailies, I start panicking. I text my DP and I'm like, oh my God, you can see off the set. You can see off the set. I can see the lights. How did this happen? I didn't see this. And he, actually thinks that I'm competent enough that he thinks,
right?
Oh,
because that's what I would be like.
Oh my God, what did we do? And then he went and looked at it and he was like, okay, Chelsea, we taped the monitor so that you saw. And I was like, oh. And I realized later in post, there were a couple moments where we actually did change the frame a little.
Yeah.
And we had all the extra room on both sides, but because we were shooting for 4 days, so we had the
I will say
hard
it's
drive
helpful.
space.
Like,
Yeah.
I had to reframe steady cam footage significantly before, and it's helpful too. But just know also, when you're talking about deliverables and size and all of that, like the only place that requires 4K, true 4K, which is 3840, is Netflix. And that's the sensor size. Everything else, like a theater, you can't, a DCP is, there's a few that have 4K DCPs, but for the majority, when you're like going to festivals or you're going to be in a theater, that's 1920 by 1080, or by 1920 by 810 if you're in 239. So that's as big as you're going to finish in a DCP. So if you're doing something smaller or a short film or something like that, it's not the end of the world to shoot smaller and not have to get two 10 terabyte hard drives.
Yeah. And, I mean, like, if I could interject.
What did you guys have to deliver in for HBO for the short?
We had DCPs, so I think,
1920 then.
yeah.
Okay.
And I don't remember what we shot in, but I don't think we forced our DP to shoot everything, because I just feel like, our director and DP had a conversation and they were more on the same page about what the look of it was going to be like, and there was no need to go all out and spend a small fortune on hard drives. Yeah. And then I have a comment about post. I'll add.
Okay, I'll give it back to you. Okay, so I'll say a quick thing about, like, you can fix a lot of what's happening in post-production. It's a really cute dog here, you guys. Oh, he put his chin on my foot.
They will also want to know about AB5. Which
Oh.
I know.
AD5?
AB5.
Oh, AB5.
Yeah. We can
Isn't that getting thrown out?
Spent all week.
continue your thought.
Anyway,
It's being thrown out.
I think it's being thrown out.
They're trying to repeal
I
it.
spent all week dealing with AB5. I don't know.
It's a nightmare.
It's tough. Sitting down and having a conversation between your editor, your colorist, your director, your DP, and even your production designer. Like, we have left out production designer because it's not our wheelhouse, but really anything you talk to a DP about, outside of like lenses and camera, you should really be talking to your production designer about as well. Let's just throw a quick plug in there for production designers because
Good for you.
they are godsends.
If we want to plug production designers, I'm all about it.
We should find one. If anybody's a production designer out there,
Yes.
can you please tell us, and we'll invite you to the
Next month, we'll
next
do one
month.
on.
Apparently, we're doing one next month. So, but yeah, a lot of this you can fix in pre-production. Like, you can talk about, like, if you've got investors that, like, I mean, you've got essentially like a client on the other side where Netflix is like they'll come to you a lot of times and be like, this is what we want. This is how we shoot this. And you might have a different idea, but you actually have to talk to them about what you want to do as opposed to them letting you decide. So that's one thing. If you like a giant client, you should find out what they want. If you,
Right.
I mean,
Sometimes they don't know.
sometimes they don't know, and they're like, okay, well, what do you think? Like, this is what we want
Often
it
they're
to.
hiring you to solve that for them.
Yeah, but like, I mean,
But
that's
I've had a client that said, I need the first minute of the film to be able to screen in a traditional aspect ratio and also in a square Instagram.
Oh, that happens on commercials all the
yes,
time.
that happens all the time.
And that is a good situation where, like, using something like a Red Epic Helium that shoots in 8K, you can shoot anamorphics and still deliver in essentially like 3 or 4K square for Instagram. That's sort of the only camera. I mean, no Monstro, you know, and the Alexa shoot that way.
Yeah, but yeah, like, camera tests ahead of your shoot are very important because you can find out what actually looks good. Like, if you're a client that doesn't really know and your DP or whoever says, well, there's multiple ways you could do this, then you should do a camera test.
Yeah.
Camera tests are like half-day things. They don't cost that much, but they'll save you so much time. And you should be able to look at the footage, make your shooting LUT, and talk to everybody about, is this the look we want? And then test a couple different things.
So nice.
My key light went out.
It still looks good though.
That's good.
You're pretty pale, so it's fine.
You see, the desert shoots are coming now. But yeah, there's the point being, there's a lot that you can fix in pre-production that you won't have to worry about in post-production.
Yeah.
That will be a nightmare in post-production if you don't fix it in pre-production.
Oh, hi, Anjali.
Yeah, post.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll say that I understand the importance of post, but it's so hard it's even harder to communicate the importance of post to writer directors because
Really? Writer directors?
yes.
Yeah.
Because they're like, I can edit it myself and
Yes.
I know how to color and I can do all of it. Don't worry.
Are they editors who are also writer directors?
Yes, but even if they're not, they'll be like, I know an editor that can do it, and they can do more things than edit, and don't worry. Like, it's so hard to communicate the importance of leaving money for post. Even harder than it is to be like, this is why we need more hands on set, and this is why we need more money for post, because they just think it's one kind of like lump sum sort of deal, and that they have a friend who knows how to do all of it. And I'm always just like, I don't know. So that part is hard to communicate. And then I will say there's a part of me where it's like, okay, if we have the budget for production, let's go ahead and shoot this.
Keep talking.
And we will cross the post-production bridge when we get there. Like, I am definitely guilty of doing that. Only because I feel like there are more possibilities for, like, in-kind donations and finding different grants that'll help you in post than there are with, you know, other than camera gear for production.
Right.
So I'll say if you're really feeling like you have to shoot something, you don't want to raise any more funds, I'll say it can be done. It's not the best idea, but just remember, you know, it's like the triangle people talk about: good, cheap, fast. So yeah. So you cannot have all of them. So if you're not gonna have money, if you're not gonna have money for post, it will be very slow.
Yes.
It can take you 2 years to finish your movie, to finish the 20 days you've shot. Like, you'll just be sitting on it. So just keep that in mind. Like, know what you're getting yourself into.
Can I tell you
Yeah.
that when I shot Susie Sunshine, which was an 18-minute short film, we did not have the money for post when we started filming. And it was my passion project, right? And we got to post and we had very little money. And I said we couldn't fundraise anymore. So I got a second job. And I worked the second job 5 days a week for 6 hours in the morning. And every dollar I made at the second job, I made a budget of how much I needed to get post done. And I literally I waited tables at the Napa Valley Grill near UCLA. And I waited tables until I made $7,532.
Wow.
And then that was my last day of work.
Wow.
But
amazing.
like, and it was, so I've done it.
Yeah.
And it's also a terrible idea.
Yeah.
But like, you also, in independent filmmaking, especially when it is someone's, and by passion project, I simply mean like, you are only making it because you want to, not because someone hired you, not because a studio hired you, really.
Yeah. Which
and
would also be like career shorts and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So like and there are a lot of finishing funds, and I had hoped to get finishing funds and I didn't, but yeah, so I think that's very typical that happens.
Yeah. I mean, I had a similar situation for a web series where I did not properly budget or schedule the amount of VFX we would need. And that literally, it exchanged the hands of 5 VFX artists. And it took 18 months to finish because...
It just does.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised at all.
So just know what you're getting yourself into. Like, consider this the PSA to be like, if you're just itching to shoot and you have enough for, to go make your indie film and you just want to do it and you don't care about post, just try to like be prepared. Just know that it'll be a rough, a long way to go before you are actually finished.
And the thing is I think the most important part of being prepared for that is emotionally, because a lot of people get to post-production and when it's not finishing and it's taking a long time, they start doing that, oh, it's fine, just finish it. Right? And they lost that entire artistic creative need that they had in pre-production when they were like, this orange isn't the perfect orange.
Right.
Now they're sitting there going like, oh, we can see off the set. Yes, fine, no one will notice.
Yeah, no,
You know
you're
what I
right.
mean? Like, oh, the boom's in the shot, no one's gonna see that. So, like, you want to maintain your artistic integrity from the beginning all the way through to the end. And if you end up with a really long post-production period because you ran out of money, try to find a way, even if that means taking a month off so that you can come back to it and still have stamina, artistic stamina.
Yeah, totally.
Because people get, and this only works when you're like 22. People get like, well, I can do it. I will do it by the strength of my own 2 hands. No one can stop me. Like, hell or high water. Which I used to be like, and then I hit 30 and I was like, ooh.
Actually, can I make a comment on that? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, I don't know. I was just thinking about it, and I was like, oh, if there's an Oscar for it or a Golden Globe for it, you should budget for it. There's an Oscar for sound design. There should be an Oscar for stunts. Okay, we'll put that one in. There's not an Oscar for that. But, like, there's an Oscar for editing. There's an Oscar for, visual effects community weighs in on the cinematography Oscar. If there's an Oscar for it, you should budget for it.
Also, just a point, Jeffrey Phillips, my father, says, how many endless hours are spent in posts that nobody's really paying for? That is that's a great question. So this is also why you should be paying your editor a lot of money. So, and I've been in a lot of people have been in editing. Nick edits stuff. Everybody edits something. So there should be a clause of like how many edits, but a lot of times in scripted there won't be because it's art. So you need to just do it until it's perfect. So, but every time, just know, if you're not an editor and you've hired an editor and you don't edit, know that every time you have a change on a cut, that is basically a whole day of the editor's life, because it's not like they just have it running in the background all the time waiting for you to give them their note and they'll cut it and it'll just go. Like if it's, especially if it's a feature length, like that is, they have to load it up, they have to find the drive of their, you know, tens of drives, load it up, make sure all of the media is attached, make sure that it's the right version of the thing, go in, make the change, and then they have to export it. Even if it was one cut and they go to export it and it's the smallest export on a feature, that's like generally about an hour to 2 hours export, not to mention the upload into wherever Dropbox, which is significantly longer because they throttled their uploads. So that is like a good day of that person's life where they're at least monitoring an export, monitoring an upload, something like that. So all of that to say, not don't give notes, but if you can like watch the film 3 or 4 times and try to give all of your notes at once instead of doing like 15 rounds of one note.
So I've never, I guess I've never worked on anything as a producer longer than 25 minutes. And even now, the project I'm doing now is 6 20-minute episodes. So it still will be, you know, I'm still staying there, right? Because in my mind, they will all have different edits, right? 6 edits, not 1 2-hour edit or whatever. My policy is rough cut, fine cut, locked cut. You get 3. So that means you get 2 rounds of notes. And beyond the locked cut, like, I feel like the third delivery is the final cut. And unless there is there's always there's that one thing you're like, yeah, we should change that.
Yeah, you watch it like 16 times, you're like, do I really hate it?
Yeah, or like we really try to let that go, or oh damn, everybody did just notice a boom in the shot, like you know, which happens, and
Or
so right, or a Starbucks stop,
Yeah.
but I think that when you're editing something smaller, it probably is easier. I can't imagine you could do rough cut, fine cut, lock cut on a feature. Like I just don't. I can't imagine you do only 3 passes. But I'm also regularly working for clients who have like drop dead dates that are like, marketing is ready to go. This has got to be released by a certain day. We really don't have time for that. So. Yeah, so we do deadlines, and I also, it should be a policy that if the client is asking for anything past what you've pre-negotiated of 3 edited cuts, then it kicks in an additional fee for the additional work that is involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point.
Oh, one more thing. Also, if you don't budget for post, you do have the potential of a project sitting there for like a year, 2 years. Cameras change and formats change. Like you could shoot a project that's in 1080 now that in a year, not happening. So you are fighting technology a little bit if you sit on a project and don't budget for post.
Yeah.
Just like that.
All right. Well, so that's going to be. Anybody else have anything else to say? Thank you so much for being here in this studio apartment.
Thanks for moderating.
I'm just thankful that my friends have so much knowledge. You know, dropping that knowledge. Apparently, we'll do more of them. I don't know. Stay tuned. Maybe I'll make a Facebook page or something. Thank you for your questions.
Bye.
End.
Also, a lot of your comments, I was like.